About 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Matt Miller here with Katie Greifeld to help take you through the closing bell. We've got a global simulcast. We're joined now by Massar and Tim Stenovec, bringing together our Bloomberg Television, radio, and YouTube audiences worldwide to parse through the most crucial moments of the trading day. And Carol, I've got to say, the biggest headline that I've seen today is not PPI, but the Trump administration possibly considering taking a stake in Intel.
I was like, my mouth was wide open because I'm trying to pick my jaw off the floor. I mean, oh my God. Intel shares up more than 7% on that news, Matt, that the Trump administration in talks with Intel to make a stake in the company. We just talked with Ryan Gould. It's not happening yet, but it sounds like there's a lot of conversations happening.
It's a new era when it comes to government involvement in American companies. Ryan brought up the example of U.S. Steel and the golden share there. We spoke weeks ago to James Litinsky over at MP Materials with that $400 million investment from the Department of Defense. This is completely different. It turns conventional wisdom on its head about the way that investors are thinking about the U.S. government and its role in commerce here.
Yeah, and American capitalism and what that actually means. We were also just talking about the sequencing of it all with our own Joe Matthew, talking about, think about this week. We started the week with that news that AMD, NVIDIA might give up 15% of their revenue from China chip sales to the U.S. government. We know that Le Boutin met with Donald Trump at the White House. Perhaps this is one of the topics that came up.
Yeah, I think very interesting considering the CHIPS Act has been so harshly criticized by this administration, but taking a stake in this company, not typically something that Republicans are behind. You hear and see the closing bells on the New York Stock Exchange and at the NASDAQ market site. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closing unchanged at 44,911. The S&P 500 also unchanged, but at least with a green arrow there, 6468. So holding at record highs for the S&P 500. The NASDAQ even less change than the other two right now at 21,710. That is also holding right around record territory.
Yep, just quick check on small caps too. We're seeing that index down about 1.25% in today's session. But if I go back, Katie, to the S&P 500, most names lower in today's session. 360 losing ground, 141 to the upside.
You know, we were talking about mid caps earlier. It was titillating. Let's talk about sectors, though. This is interesting.
What index even is that?
It's the S&P 400 mid-cap index. Remember that name. Anyway, you take a look at sectors right now. It's pretty much a lot of green, a lot of red. What is leading, though? Financials today having a good day. So, too, did consumer discretionary. What isn't doing so hot? Industrials not having a great day, nor did consumer staples, but almost an even split there, Carol.
Do you know what is doing really well today?
I was hoping you'd tell me.
Number one gainer, Intel. Let's go right to it. That stock up as much as almost 9% today, finishing with a 7.4% gain. Again, it's that story that our team just put out about the Trump administration in talks to have the U.S. government potentially take a stake in the beleaguered chip maker, helping support the company's efforts to really expand domestic manufacturing. Again, according to people familiar. Maybe we'll go back to gainers, but Matt, you've got some earnings related to the chip space.
Since we're on chips, and I know a lot of people watch this show for the breaking earnings news at the close, we've got Applied Materials coming out with third quarter semiconductor system sales of $5.43 billion. The estimate was for $5.39 billion. The revenue on that level just a little bit stronger than expected. Net sales were $7.3 billion in total, and that beats the estimate by almost $100 million. $7.21 billion was the estimate. So better than expected on the sales side in terms of getting down to the bottom of the income statement. Adjusted EPS, $2.48. And we were looking for 236. So 248 over 236 is a beat for AMAT. And is that enough to move the stock in the after hours trade? Well, it's moving down, though. If it beats on the top and bottom line, it should be moving up. We have to dig into this statement to figure out what's going on at AMAT.
Yeah, pretty negative in terms of the trade that we're seeing here in the after hours. All right, folks, I'm going to go back to some of the stocks on the move here. I mentioned Intel, which was the number one gainer in the S&P 500. Got to talk about some of the IPOs. We've seen some flow this week in a big way. MIAX, ticker is MIAX, having its first day of trading its IPO. The exchange operator became the most recent financial services business to really get a warm welcome on Wall Street. The stock closing with a nearly 34% gain in today's session.
Is it weird?
What?
Well, that an exchange operator would go public on another exchange?
You know, Matt, we're living in weird,
It's so
weird
meta.
times.
It is.
Am I wrong?
It
You're
plays
not
a
wrong.
lot into derivatives.
Can you go public on yourself?
Doesn't it play a lot into derivatives and options? And I don't know, maybe it's another option?
I mean, yes, you can go public on your own exchange, right? We see that with
ICE?
all of the other exchanges.
Yeah. So why don't they?
I don't know.
Speaking of exchanges, how about Bullish?
Let's go to Bullish, another IPO this week. Well done, well done. That went up another almost 10% in today's session. That's after at its highs yesterday, more than 200%, but really rallying for a second day. So yeah, it's been kind of a good week for IPOs. So let's go to those that didn't do so well.
Yeah, John Deere tumbling today, down as much as 8.4% earlier in the session, down 6.7% on the day. The company trimming its annual earnings outlook. In fact, lower grain prices are causing struggling farmers to delay buying new machinery. That hitting the company's top line. Deere also saying tariffs, such as those on steel aluminum, are eating into profits in segments for small agricultural and turf, as well as construction and forestry. The company did estimate that tariff costs for the fiscal year would be $600 million. That's up from a previous estimate of $500 million. Coherent, down 19.6% today. It's the optical materials and semiconductor device company. Shares fell after the company late yesterday gave an outlook that some analysts said was underwhelming. It also said it would sell its aerospace and defense business to Advent for $400 million. Companies that call Coherent a supplier include Cisco, HPE, Dell, Nokia, NVIDIA, Apple, and more. And finally, Tapestry. It's the parent company of Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman. Shares fell as much as 18% earlier in the session. Today, down 16% at the end of the day. Tariff costs, weakness when it comes to the Kate Spade brand. The company's Coach brand is still doing well, but President Trump's tariffs weighed on profit, on a profit outlook that trailed estimates, according to some analysts. Katie.
I will say that Tapestry did have a very high bar to clear. I think coming into earnings, their shares were up something like 50-something% year to date. Actually, they're still higher by 50% year to date, even higher heading into earnings. I do want to quickly talk about Hims and Hers Health dropping after hours right now, currently off by about 2.4%. We just got this headline that Hims and Hers is being probed by the FTC over cancellation practices. Don't have much detail beyond that headline, but you can see traders reacting to that in the after hours. Shares currently off by about 2%, Matt Miller.
I should point out, too, that there's a couple of press releases crossing in terms of law firms involved, I guess, class actions against Hims and Hers, and it has to do with false or misleading statements. Hims and Hers was engaged in the deceptive promotion and sale of illegitimate knockoff versions of Wegovy. So it gets into kind of their core business. Anyway, there's a lot of detail in there, but it's all starting to trickle out. And that stock is definitely.
I dodged a bullet there, right? I was just about to buy that stuff.
Oh, no.
Take a look at the yields.
No, there's not necessarily anything wrong with the drugs. It's just what they were doing.
And there's nothing wrong with you, Matt. You look great.
Thank you very much, but I want to avoid heart disease and Alzheimer's. Take a look at the bond yields here. We saw a flattening of the curve today. The 2-year yield rising much more than the 30-year yield, but also more than the 5s and the 10s. So 373 basically on the 2s as investors expect less of a cut, let's say, in September than maybe they did yesterday.
Maybe not 50 basis points either.
Exactly. Maybe not that. But still, I think we're pricing in almost one full cut, right?
All I'm going to say is there's a bunch of things to get through. Jackson Hole, some more data reports before we get to
more jobs, another CPI, another PPI.
Yes, right, exactly. I got to go back to Intel because it was the number one gainer in the S&P 500, finishing up 7.4% in the regular session. It's up another 1.8% in the aftermarket. Our team of Ryan Gould, Josh Wingrove, and Leanna Baker out with the story about the Trump administration considering maybe taking an actual investment stake in Intel. This is according to people that they've talked to.
A question I have is, obviously, an infusion of cash would be huge for the company. Cash is cash, and the question though that I have is it a bigger story about Intel and what Intel needs to do in order to turn itself around. Is cash enough to do that?
There's a lot of questions that I have. I think it's a bigger story for Intel, like you said. It's also a bigger story for just how the U.S. government gets involved with American companies. I mean, this is pretty wild. And you think about all the different ripple effects here, Matt, you could get dizzy.
Republicans today are very different than Republicans in my youth. But look, they don't really need to turn around the company, right? They just need the cash to do the investment that they had been planning on doing before the CHIPS Act